Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Karen Benarek. I am the Adult Program Coordinator here at the Downers Grove Library. We are so happy you are here with us. You are here with us today. A couple of quick things. The program is being recorded. Everybody will get the link when it's ready to go. As you can tell, we also have transcripts enabled. Hopefully that will help everybody out. There will be a question and answer portion at the end. So if you hover down at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box that you can click. So feel free to add your questions in there as we go along. Food Rescue US is our February organization of the month, and to tell you a little bit about what the organization of the month is our public relations manager, Cindy Kotry.
Hi, everyone. So the organization of the month is a program here at the Downers Grove Public Library where we feature a local nonprofit that is either located in or serves Downers Grove. So each month, a different organization is featured through our marketing in the library and sometimes in programs like these. So we're really excited for Food Rescue US to be featured this month, and we're really excited about the contributions that they're doing in helping to solve the food waste problem here. And so you can find a link to their website in addition to the application to be featured as an organization of the month on our website under the community resources tab.
Thanks, Cindy. So today we have 4 speakers. We have, we have Jing Chen, who is the food rescue a U.S. Willowbrook site coordinator. We have Victoria Zapata, Food Rescue U.S. National Associate and Site Director. Jane Sue, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Emmanuel Lutheran Church. She is their food pantry director, and Dana Rainey, who is the donations coordinator at Imperfect Foods. And to get us started, I'm sorry. To get us started, we'll be Jing. Take it away.
Thank you so much. All right, so I made a slideshow just to make it easier. I'm sure you guys don't want to read a bunch of stuff, so I'll give you the visuals. And this is basically, well, first of all, thank you so much. I realized that it's kind of rare for a resident to talk to a bunch of residents at once. So we always have one-to-one interactions in our daily lives, but I don't take it lightly at all that you guys all made it here today on a Monday afternoon to hear me speak, as resident to resident in our community. So thank you so much for the recognition as Organization of the Month. There's so many of us who are part of this umbrella, who are interconnected. So it's not just me, it's not just our organization that I want to recognize today, but a collective of us with the same goals today. So a lot of stuff here today. I know that, we can go to the next slide. There are so many things that we could go into really detailed information with, but feel free to send me an email. I can give you further readings if one of these topics popped up to you or you wanted to know more about one of the things we talked about today. For our 1 hour, I'm going to give you, the starting points and go from there. All right, so that brings us, Cindy, we're on slide 3. All right, so myself and my colleagues will be talking today. Let me go to slide 4. The 3 parts of this presentation are such. So part 1 is going to deal with understanding what creates food waste. We all shop, we all buy food. We might even waste food in our own homes, but on a large scale in our communities, in our state, in our country, what does that look like? What's the impact, especially on the environment? And what is food insecurity? What contributes to food insecurity? Why some people cannot find access or get access to food? Part two deals with what Food Rescue US aims to address these issues and how we as a grassroots movement can help each other. And 3, we'll talk about how you can get involved and how the site can further evolve. If you have questions, I would love to have them and answer them. We're going to just keep that for the Q&A section at the end. So hold on to your questions or write them in the chat box. Someone will help moderate later on as we go. All right, so we can go to slide 4, slide 5. All right, so if you guys are in the middle of your day, if you happen to have a piece of paper, if you have some thoughts, I would love to hear about them. Cindy and I are organizing something at the library in person after the 20th. So come by, I'd love to meet you, get to know your story, your relationship with food as well. Today, write these things down if you have thoughts on it, what resonated with you, if any of the information or stories that we shared today, had something in common with you. And I'd like to know, what is your biggest concern about food in our communities? Could be food safety, could be how food gets made or handled or goes from farm to plate. So keep those questions for the end. All right, who am I? Why am I talking to you guys today? I want to emphasize I'm not an expert. I'm learning just like everybody else. My background is in music, and I studied social, cultural, linguistic anthropology. So unlike a lot of my colleagues who have backgrounds in policy and come from corporate backgrounds, a lot of this was new to me, but my family has a very special relationship with food in such that food is like a language in our house. My parents came to the US in the 90s. So I was born in China. We moved here when I was quite young. I had a very typical Midwestern upbringing. There's a photo of me in school in a very smart school outfit. And then there's a picture of me doing Girl Scout stuff. I have been playing the viola since I was age 10. So that brought me into another chapter of my life where I traveled abroad a lot to perform and to study. The more places I went, I was curious about how people eat, how people shop, what are their food rituals like? How does that, pace their lifestyles every day? So my parents, this is a picture of food from our garden, actually. They're very big into growing food, and that kind of shed light onto how much time, water, energy goes into growing something, goes into making sure it comes out edible. And it really takes a lot of attention. And we're also really big in our house with eating whole foods, eating fresh, or making it our own. If you go to the next slide, got a couple pictures here. So I'm not from a food industry background, but food has always been important to us. My parents grew up in China in a time where historically there were a lot of obstacles for people to get food access. there was a national famine, there was a cultural revolution. There were times when like there was no food, or you have to just, go without it. So we were definitely one of those households where it's like, you can't leave the table till you finish your food because that's too good to waste. The first time a mass um, kind of awareness for food waste came in college when I saw the film The Gleaners and I, which was a documentary that kind of tracks and talks about gleaning as a process of recovering on farm waste, gleaning in modern sense of maybe freeganism, where people recover waste that's been thrown out because it's unsaleable. That was the first time that clicked for me that, wow, there's a lot of food out there that's not being used. Why? Why aren't stores using all of it? Why are they making so much? Should they be responsible for having a plan for that food before they open a business? If people recover that food, is it safe to eat? How is it distributed? So a lot of questions I had in the beginning. It was also a learning curve and journey of finding that out, asking questions, asking people in my community as well. And, like back to basics, what do? You start asking questions. And I think the interesting thing in this journey is like, well, the worst thing people can say is no, right? So there was a lot of cold calling in the beginning, asking people if they have a need for this, for food rescue, for people to, take this edible food that they're not going to use and take it somewhere where it can be reused responsibly. The other part was also aligning myself with, like people in the community like Dana, Jane, all these agencies we work with that share the same values, right? If we have extra food, if you have people who need it, to me, that's a no-brainer. That should be, a direct connection. And the other part of the learning curve was also proving to our food donors that we are reliable. We're not going to let this go to waste. We are going to send it and make sure it's safe for consumption. We're going to come when we say we're going to come and, pick up and be respectful of their everyday activities, especially in the warehouse. Dana will tell you warehouses can be dangerous. People are busy. They got a million things to keep track of. We don't want to be in there to distract them. We want to make their jobs easier. So let me go to the next slide. Just to give you an idea of what we're rescuing. No, we don't dumpster dive. That's not what we do. We have a lot of retail rescues. We also have some larger scale rescues that need help of like a box truck or semi truck even. So, the top row of pictures, you can see we get stuff in pallets sometimes. That whole pallet could be one product. That pallet goes to an agency where they set up for distribution. Volunteers also are needed to help, unpack, distribute, maybe organize. You definitely don't want to send a family home with 400, boxes of mushrooms. That's not a sensible way to use that product. So sometimes volunteers are helping us pack bags or boxes so that they get a variety of products to take home. So there you see some people grabbing some food and just heading out, making something delicious with it. Our retail rescues look more like this. There might be a few boxes of different things. There was a car with rescuers packing probably 300 pounds of bread into a van and taking it directly to our agencies. And then their agencies contact clients, or they have set days of the week where clients can come and get their food. All right. So as an overview, I started this in June of 2021. This was like in the middle of the pandemic. I was really depressed. I was seeing a lot of problems. I was kind of just like, news headlines ringing in my head about how we were dumping millions of pounds of milk and a lot of food wasn't getting used because things were closing. Schools are closing. So I was also at a point in the whole pandemic, I was super depressed about stuff being closed. I was just like, okay, if stuff keeps ending, we got to start something. I just want to start something, and then I don't know, have this go somewhere. Maybe I'll rescue a couple boxes of food and from my local store, but I didn't expect to get this big. And over the months up till now, we've probably rescued about 130,000 pounds of food, a lot of retail rescues. This is about 210 rescues. Some have been coming from like volunteers who've been helping us, volunteers from the agencies who've helped, and I've done some of them myself, and it's really fun actually. So on average, I think per month, about 10 or 16,000 pounds of food come through, and we're passing that to agencies. All right, the next slide. So where does all this food come from? Why are we wasting so much food? These were my initial questions. And what does that look like for our environment? One of the reasons why, food waste is such a hot topic is because of global warming as well. If food is sitting, rotting, it's releasing methane, and that's a very harmful, gas emission that's right here. When I think I pulled this off of the EPA's website, that's accounting for 10% of the U-House gas emissions contributions 2019. It might be higher now. And 19 million tons of waste. So you can picture that is passed into landfills in Illinois. So our state every year, 20% is food waste, and in pounds, that's 7.6 billion pounds of food that could have been eaten, could have been given to people who needed it, could have been, could have even been turned into compost, but that's still a lot. And I'm still trying to understand, how does that happen? What can we do about it? We go on to the next slide. Another learning curve of mine was to also understand our supply chain system. So food obviously comes from farms. When we live in urban layouts like this, we're in Chicagoland, some of us are in the city, we're nowhere near a farm unless you have a backyard garden. But there's a couple ways food gets to our plates. So farms do produce a lot of food. Some of it gets, sent to packing, just transformations. Like if you think about when we eat and prepare for Thanksgiving, some of that produce has to go to a place, a factory, to get put into cans or cooked, and then it's sent to a warehouse, then it gets to our stores, and then we bring it home. Companies like Imperfect Foods, for example, they don't have retail stores, not that kind of model. They might have all the food come to one place, and they have individual drivers who send it to their subscribers. And then another way we also get food is through farmers markets. You might see them along the BNSF railroad, once a week during the summer and springtime. This is when farmers directly bring their own food, set up stands, and sell them directly to consumers. So this is a very simplified supply chain. There are many, many, many other types of supply chains as well. But through every stage, there are times when not all the food is used. On farm waste, so farmers have to grow the food, but not all the food might be sold. Sometimes if it costs more than the labor to harvest the food, that doesn't make sense for them to harvest. That might just stay there. That might just stay and rot and never be harvested in the first place. The factories that have machines that package or cook food, they do test runs. So sometimes if you do a test run, that food might not be sold. That food is solely for the purpose of making sure that assembly line or the machinery is functioning properly. I've also heard about mislabeling. So for example, if a can of soup says it has these 5 ingredients, but there's actually 1 extra ingredient in there that wasn't on the label, that might be a situation where they won't want to sell that whole lot, and that could get donated or that might be dumped. And 30 to 40% of our food in stores are not sold, actually. That's another difference I noticed while living abroad. You have much smaller inventories in stores in Europe, for example. Our stores are full all the time. Our bakeries, they're full all the time because it's enticing to look at. They want you to come back. They want you to know that this is my one-stop shop. I don't have to go to 5 stores to get my meat, cheese, produce, bakery. It's all here. So part of that, we do a lot of rescues during holidays is because they keep such a high volume of food available, but not all of it is sold. So these are all times and situations we can help out by asking the question, what do you do with your surplus food? Do you have a way do you have any, plan for it afterwards? Would you be okay with donating that? So these are questions that I, as site director, have asked people before. Okay, next slide. I do want to mention that our state, Illinois, doesn't offer tax incentives. But on a federal level, a lot of stores can get tax incentives. Some states do offer both a state and a federal tax incentive for donations. So there are some differences from state to state. So just to get an idea, this is a picture that these pictures were sent by a really nice truck driver. He was taking produce up from, I think, Virginia. So this was his last stop, and the buyer did not want these beautiful bell peppers because this guy over here is moldy. And, I get it. If that one is moldy, they might not want the whole lot. They're not sure if that is a good lot to take and sell to their customers. But that's still a lot of food that can be, repurposed in a different way. So don't worry, this didn't go to the food bank. This wasn't dumped, but that gives you a sense of the journey, right? This was grown in Mexico, I believe, traveled to Virginia, traveled from Virginia to Chicagoland. So during that time, I think it was July, I was like, wow, these peppers traveled more than I did during the pandemic. And I like this picture because all the bell peppers look like they're turned away from that one. They're like really embarrassed of this guy. Traveled 12 hours, we didn't make it to the store. All right, go next slide. This was a really interesting graph here. I don't know if you can make out all the small font, but if we were to recover more food at the source, I think that would be great. So it shows here source reduction. We can feed hungry people, we can feed animals, we can turn it into industrial uses, composting, and landfill. Obviously, those are the last resorts. So there is a lot of opportunity to rescue food, whether it's at the beginning of its supply chain process, in the middle, or towards the end. And I think that's all potential for sites, whether it be this one or other Food Rescue US sites in the future. Okay, make sure my notes are lining up. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, so coming back to that point, I was traveling a lot in Europe. I was kind of exposed to different ways of how people lived. And my little anthropology brain kind of went, okay, what are people doing in their stores? How do you sell your produce? How are you packaging your food? Because packaging is actually a big contributor to how long the food can last on its journey, like that moldy green pepper. Is there a way around that? Is there a way to make it last longer? Or is there something we need to think about in the supply chain that can influence this? So I was really blown away with some of the things other countries were doing, other people were doing. The two pictures on the left, that's a friend's garden, and this was in France. She was very conscious of how she used her food. I would take kale, I would rip off the leaves and chuck the stems because like I'm not gonna eat the stems, but she would use every part. If she was using the leaves for the salad, the stems chopped up for soup. If there were any leftovers, it's going to the chickens in the coop and they're gonna lay eggs because they've been eating organic vegetables. So I was really blown away by that. And I felt kind of guilty for throwing away a lot of my produce just because I thought it was inedible. So these middle pictures are from a grocery store in Austria. And I was also blown away by the lack of plastic they were using. So sometimes plastic can trap humidity and cause mold to form. But see how, they don't have a mountain, a pyramid of one product. It's just a basket. Honestly, if you don't go by 5, there's no more. So encourages people to shop earlier and shop daily. But that also comes down to urban planning, which is so important. We probably shop once a week, whereas people there shop 2 or 3 times a week. That's something to factor in. But it gave me a lot of insight and perspective on, there's another way to do it. You don't always have to package, your pasta and green beans and a lot of plastic non-recyclable materials. And the picture on the right, this is a vending machine outside a bakery. So they would take their day-old bakery, put it in a vending machine. You could probably stick like a €1 coin and get yourself a piece of bread or a sandwich. And I thought that's pretty cool. You don't need someone to open the store to have that happen. And here's a couple more pictures. So you can see with mushrooms, they're not in what we have, the plastic wrap around the styrofoam carton. A lot of herbs are still with roots in the soil. You just take that little carton home. You can keep growing it or you can snip it off and use it as garnish. A lot of berries aren't even covered. So that's a big difference as well with our national food regulation laws and their food regulation laws. I think they are more strict with pesticides and chemicals. If I took this produce home, put it on the counter, it will go bad faster than produce would go bad that I buy in the US. So that's another big difference. How are we treating produce before it gets to the store? And often heads of lettuce like that, they'll still have the roots and like a clump of dirt attached just to keep it fresh. It's not just severed from the roots and stuck in a plastic wrap and in the boxes. Yeah. See, the corn will have plastic, but that's not native to Europe. I'm sure that's imported. All right, so food waste and then food insecurity is the other half. In Illinois, these pictures come from Feeding America, I believe. So about 1 in 10 people, and I was really surprised to learn this, in Illinois struggle with food insecurity, and 1 in 8 are children. So this really became kind of headlines during the pandemic when schools closed. Was that a lot of children were getting their food at school, and if schools are closed, they're not getting that one meal a day. Is there enough money from the government to help? Not as much as we would like. It's still a combination of government funded programs and charity programs that work together to bridge the gap. So that was also another learning curve of mine, just kind of understanding why food access is difficult. And Jane might talk about this later, but in her area, there aren't that many grocery stores. So a lot of the food pantries, I wouldn't say compete because they do help each other, but it is very difficult to rescue from that particular area just because there aren't as many stores compared to, say, like Oak Brook or Willowbrook, where we have a couple more grocery chains in that what do you call it, circumference. All right, slide 16. All right, I won't read all this out to you, but these are all questions that I or our food agency directors, food pantry directors all have had. So if we're going to move food, that's a donation from point A to point B, we need to figure out, how are we moving it? Is the car going to be refrigerated? What is the distance? How long before it can go from the transport into the agency? What's the refrigeration volume like? Do you have freezer space? Who's going to help you, move it, distribute it? There are a lot of these kind of details that we kind of figure out daily. And sometimes when we get rescues, donations last minute, we have to be prepared. If we get a lot of food, how are we going to distribute it? If we get a lot of food, how are we going to transport and store it until we can distribute it? Also, food safety. What is the condition of the food? What about food allergies? What is the date on the food for expiration? Has it been open? Has it been chilled? All these things we have to consider just to make the food safe for distribution. So all these questions and more are things my colleagues probably tell you that we have come across and have to do our best to find solutions for. All right, so we enter part 2. Food Rescue US. I did not know about this organization, to be honest, until I started doing research on ways to food rescue locally. And I came across the organization, their website. I saw a couple of videos and I reached out, and Victoria was the one who responded. We got on a Zoom call and then things took off from there. So Victoria is kind of a force of nature, I would say. She does rescue on such a large scale. It's astonishing. I don't know where all the food goes. I don't know how she does all of that and, balance her other roles as a mom, and her other duties at Food Rescue US as National Associate, which means also mentoring food directors like me and boarding affiliates and all of that stuff. So I'm going to pass it to Victoria, and she can tell you a little bit about our start as Food Rescue US since 2011 and what she has done with her site, which is very amazing.
I think we may have lost Victoria.
Oh, okay. I know she was picking up her daughter, so we can come back to Victoria if that's all right. Okay. So in a nutshell, I would describe Food Rescue US as a tech solution. This idea was born in 2011 in Connecticut when the founders decided that, okay, enough of food waste, enough of food insecurity, we can do something about this. So they created a software that's kind of like an Uber app that will tell you all the details about pickup time, who's picking up, how much to pick up, what vehicle to bring, and then where is it going. So all three parties, the donor, the rescue, the agency, are coordinated by the site director. Everybody's in agreement and aware of what's arriving, what is leaving, who's picking it up. The idea is to make this hyper local. So a grocery store and an agency will probably be no more than a 15-minute, 20-minute drive, just like your local grocery trip. And who is rescuing? Let me tell you, we're all volunteers. No one's being paid. We're doing this because we really believe in what we're doing. So it's really down to the community engagement that has been so amazing. People who stepped up and said, yeah, I'm going to come and take 30 minutes of my day and help out with this so that like 600 pounds of produce is not going to be wasted. And a few hundred families can use that food. And, I just think that's really beautiful. There aren't contracts. I tell my food owners, look, you're not signing a contract. You're not paying us anything. This is just like, this is my word. We're not doing this because we're obligated. We are doing this because we want to. So that's the idea of it. It's very hyper local. It's very grassroots. And the idea is also that you are helping your neighborhood, the store that you shop at, you're helping them and you're helping your neighbors. With this site in Chicagoland, it's very interesting because we're not like the kind of town that has Main Street and everything is on Main Street and we have 2 stores and 1 church and 1 school, 1 library. All of us in the suburbs, we probably work, eat, you know, do extracurricular activities, go to school, in probably 6 different cities. So we're all very interconnected in Chicagoland. I thought I was just going to be probably helping out Willowbrook and around, but it turned out that Chicagoland is a big network. We've been helping people as far as, you know, downtown, north side, south side, Cook and DuPage County. So we, you know, even if I wanted to help out Willowbrook, it's impossible. We depend on each other, we share with each other. So that's been something really amazing to know about my community and the people who live here. All right, we pop to the next slide. All right, so what is this software? Like I said, we are not a warehouse. We don't house the food. We don't hold the food. The food's going directly from donor to agency. We are a technology solution. That's how I describe it. We're built on relationships and we use technology to help facilitate all the logistics and communication. So we have, you know, we can do this later in the Q&A if you guys need help. I will also be at the library in person. So we have an app that you can access on your laptop, on a computer, or you can also download it on your phone. Mind you, it's not downloadable in the App Store. It's downloadable through our website. There will be a button, like a screen window that pops up to ask if you want to add this to your phone home screen. This will work on an iPhone or Android, any kind of smartphone. So here are a couple of screen grabs I took. It's very much user-friendly. You have a schedule. It tells you, for the example here, it's coming from Costco on that day and it's going to that church directly. It's a 10-mile drive. The rescuer can see that. Rescuers can adopt a rescue, which means if that's a regular rescue, they can help out and commit to that and be there every week. So there's continuity. Or if you just have time to do one, that's fine. You can claim it and that rescue will be yours to transport. So in our app, we're able to do a lot of things like show what kind of product was rescued, what was the weight, what kind of category was it? Was it bakery, produce, meat? And the rescuer is also able to put comments in to let me know if something didn't go well or just give me suggestions, and also upload photos that we sometimes post to social media as well. So it's very user-friendly. And slide 21, here we are. These are all photos taken from rescue. So you see that we don't have, you know, we're not chipping out a lot of money for a truck. We're just really blessed to have people who took their time, took their cars, picked up all this food. These are all the retail ones, I believe. You see like lots of bread. This country has a lot of bread to rescue, a lot of produce. And our agencies are not obligated to take everything, right? You know, we only want people to take what they think they would even give their families. So they're not taking bad food. A lot of this food is just near their sell-by date, or might have like the beverages, for example. Often they have damages or like a broken packaging thing or dented packaging they can't sell, but that's all rescuable. And then on a larger scale, sometimes like from Imperfect Foods, we will need a truck and that will bring pallets of food. So there could be produce in there, there could be, I think those are turkeys. And Jane can speak to this. What the community has done, sometimes they will even set up like a farmer's market for people to come and share the food. All right, I'm going to pass it on to Jane. Jane is the food pantry director at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Hillside. She has been, I don't know how you sleep, Jane. I don't know when you find time, but this is a picture outside of her church. She puts this up for every large distribution. It's my favorite sign, which are the most two beautiful words ever, free food. And her volunteers are amazing to work with, and just see them share food, organize food, and move it is really inspiring. So go ahead, Jane.
Thank you, Jane. Can you hear me okay? This has been a joy to be able to work with Jane this year. Last year, starting, I believe it was the beginning of August, not far or not long after you started the Food Rescue US Willowbrook. I don't have background in food security or in food rescue. About 5 years ago, our church started, it's actually 2014, our church started a community garden on our vacant 10-acre property. And when COVID-19 struck, that winter, say around January, when things started going sideways in the US, we knew we couldn't produce enough food in our community garden for the amount of people that were struggling to get food on their plates. And at that time, people were hoarding supplies and shelves were empty in the grocery stores. So rather than writing grants and seeking funding to advance our food mission for our garden, I did something similar as Jing did, as research the Environmental Protection Agency on the food waste situation, especially in Illinois. And there is a whole section dedicated to the faith-based community on how they can get involved in rescuing food and preventing food waste. And although I didn't know diddly about doing any of this, I did the research and I really felt educated enough to prepare a good funding grant for our church to help support the starting of a food pantry. And just like a lot of other food pantries or faith-based ministries who want to feed people, the number one thing is, where are we going to get the food? If the shelves are empty, how are we going to get the food? If we do have funds, do we have to pay full retail for food in order to supply people? I knew that there was a lot of food waste and there was a lot of produce and so forth that was not being used. So my number one mission was to locate where these retail stores had excess food. And the first obstacle I came across was all the retail grocery stores like Walmart, Mariano's, Jewel Osco, our local grocery stores. In order to rescue their food, you have to be members of either the Greater Chicago Food Depository, which is serving Cook County, or the Northern Illinois Food Bank, which serves only DuPage County. You're not allowed to rescue food unless you're an agency member. That really upset me, because we in Hillside didn't have a single grocery store in our town itself that I could even go to. Closest store was Westchester. And of course, there's a Westchester Food Pantry. That is a Northern or Greater Chicago Food Deposit member that was already doing regular pickups. So I had to find sources of food, and it was a lot of like Jean had put in her slide, cold calling. So my first inkling was, right now, who has a lot of food that's not being used? And a big light bulb went off in my head. I contacted the food distributor for the airline for O'Hare and Midway. And in that contact, I was able to find a source for regular food donations that were coming in such large quantities. I would say about 40 pallets of frozen food per week. Now, obviously, this is a church. We don't have a pantry. We don't have a retail store. We didn't even have a single shelving unit to even store anything, yet alone a freezer space that can hold 40 pallets worth of food. And rather than disregarding this massive amount of donations of foods that were available, I agreed to accept my first truckload of food by contacting a local warehouse that agreed to donate the space to us to hold a large food distribution. So to involve a lot of the faith-based communities, there's about 210 Lutheran churches in the Northern Illinois area. Tried to get a lot of them on board to start emergency food assistance programs. And I was able to reach about 42 of those 210 churches that were still operating during COVID-19. All joined me at the warehouse, and we were actually able to utilize all 40 pallets of those frozen foods, which is about 95,000 pounds of food that we were able to receive and redistribute in one day. So because that was a successful first try, we have been able to do that, not on that scale today, but throughout the entire year of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. There were large amounts of foods available. Now, of course, these aren't all the right foods for families. There was no dairy, no eggs, no fresh produce in any of these donations. But working with Jing and other organizations and other food pantries that receive food, there was still a lot of extra food that we were all sharing with each other. So I contacted our local food pantries that are closest to our church here in Hillside. And so our closest neighboring food pantry is Elmhurst in Westchester. Elmhurst is in DuPage County. Westchester is in Cook County. There's only about a mile separation between our two counties, Hillside being right on the border. So because we're kind of on the border of Cook County and DuPage County, it was the most difficult area to receive food. Nobody in Cook County wanted to give me food that they knew was going to be going to residents of DuPage County and vice versa. And that is all a food bank issue, but it has nothing to do with rescuing food and getting it where it needed to go, to the people who needed it the most, who were, I guess, unemployed or suffering from COVID and deaths and illness and all the other obstacles that were thrown in our path during COVID-19, layoffs and whatnot. So not everybody felt that they were on a permanent needy basis to receive food, but were grateful to be able to come when they needed it, whenever they needed it, to come on our food distribution days. And so that was seeing that impact, one, rescuing that amount of food from a landfill, and two, being able to put this high quality food in the hands of the people who needed it most. Knowing that we could not reach those areas of Chicago or those areas of DuPage County that were these little pockets of civil unrest, I would say, A lot of stores were broken into, and grocery stores were boarded up. We could not possibly reach all these little pockets, but by partnering with other agencies and other churches and food ministries, we were able to get the food into those areas without draining our resources by sending all our volunteers miles away from our hometown. We were really grateful that a lot of people were willing to start a food rescue, even if it was only on a temporary basis, so that we could work together and not only help our community, but help these businesses and grocery stores that were suffering great financial losses from all that food loss. Organizations like Imperfect Foods and Cisco Foods and the food distributors for the airlines, without a place to donate their product and receive the, I would say, the tax incentives, many of these businesses would have suffered greatly if these people weren't rescuing the food. So I'm really grateful for that. And Dana, especially being able to provide somewhat regularly the excellent fresh produce was just amazing. A lot of the photos that Jing had posted on her slides, I recognized from events that we have held either in our own church or one of the agencies that we support, like Youth Crossroads in Berwyn and Inner City Impact in Cicero and Chicago, holding those large free farmers markets to get those foods to those areas. Thank you, Jing. All these green bags are Manual Lutheran Church food distribution, and we do a big distribution once a month. We serve about 150 families in a one-day event, about two hours long. And all the food is assorted rescued food from Imperfect Foods or from retail grocery stores or from the airlines. Cisco is a great supplier of food donations, especially dairy and shelf-stable foods. So we're able to offer a nice variety. Also, we receive a lot of snacks and beverages from warehouses that aren't allowed to donate to the food banks because it's obviously not the most nutritious food available. But we know our families spend money on those types of foods when they go shopping, and our main interest is to prevent the food waste. And if the people want to take a 6-pack of bottled waters or soda or snack chips for their kids' lunches, we're grateful for that. We're grateful for those donations. We know they're going to be used. We know that the people will save money if they come to us, and it's included in their food boxes. So it's been quite a experience. I have never done this before in my life. I've been doing it for this is going on our 3rd year at Emmanuel Church. Excuse me.
Jane, I was wondering if you can give us an idea of how many families or cars do come for one distribution, and from what parts are they coming from? Is it all just Hillside, Westchester, or are they on that boundary of the counties, or are they coming from other places as well?
Well, because we're not registered with the state of Illinois as a registered food pantry, we're not restricted to who we serve. So if you're a member of the Northern Illinois Food Bank or the Greater Chicago Food Depository, you have a set number of towns that you can serve, and none of the food pantries overlap those towns. Us, on the other hand, we advertise all over the Chicagoland area. We accept anyone from wherever if they're willing to drive, we'll serve them. So on an average day, when we do a distribution, we usually get between 105 and 150 cars come through, and a couple of the cars have more than one family in it. So last Saturday, we had a distribution. We gave away 20,000 pounds of food in a 2-day period. We had a distribution on Friday and on Saturday. On Friday, we served 18 food relief organizations, some faith-based and some secular, and 4 local food pantries. And that was with the donations that we received from United and Delta Airlines, and also from a distributor up in Elk Grove Village, which was just all snacks and beverages. So on Saturday, we served about 117 cars, and there was about 133 families total. And some of those families had 10 people in the family. We had 406 individuals that we served on Saturday. And on Friday, the agencies we served, 14 of them actually had food distributions, and they served a combined total of 1,200 families, which was amazing. Not everybody got full bags of groceries, but that's how many came to their events. They just came to us to get to share the food rescue that we picked up, which was the snacks and beverages, and a lot of pastries from the airlines. So we do that every month. We try to hold at least one big event for the communities to come and pick up food. We host one big event where we share the food with other food agencies, food relief agencies, anywhere from Westchester Food Pantry to the Village of Hillside Fire Department, who received our snacks and beverages. A lot of first responders do come and pick up our excess food, especially the fire department, who prepares a lot of meals for their teams. As you can see, our families get a bag of groceries, they get a box of groceries, and they also receive extra items like personal care, toilet paper, beverages. Sometimes we get milk, and of course, produce and salads.
Jane, when is your next distribution planned for?
Our next distribution is Saturday, March the 12th. And usually we'll receive a donation the Thursday and Friday before our events. And the day before, all our extra food that we don't need for our Saturday distribution, we will share with other food relief agencies and soup kitchens.
I volunteered with Jane before these days. It's a lot of fun. It's very hectic, but I mean, there's a thrill to just giving out a mass ton of food, and it makes people really happy and just kind of like worth the wait. Sometimes they wait 2 hours in line with those cars.
I've seen cars lined up before. I'm usually the first one to get there to set up all these set up for the event. And I know that if the people are willing to come and wait for 2 hours in their car when it's below zero, there's no doubt in my mind that these people are in need, and the ones that come that may not be in dire need are really helping out their neighbors and their extended family. So many of the people coming are caring for family members' children who's lost their parents and, because of illness. And it changes every week. There's always new people coming, and sometimes our regulars we don't see anymore. We're always hoping that their situation changed. Maybe they got jobs. A lot of elderly people who are caring for their elderly neighbors will come and pick up groceries and share just maybe one bag of food because elderly people don't really require that much food versus the families that have 7 teenagers in their house. That's a big difference, and they may not be in need or may not even be eligible for government funds to pay for groceries. Having an extra bag and box of food really does help them make their ends meet. And whatever their reasons are for coming to the pantry, we're there to help them and support them, and find out what we can do to help their additional needs. A lot of times people ask if we have clothing, we'll direct them to clothing. A lot of people are driving far. They'll want to know if there's a pantry they can go to closer to their home. A lot of these people don't know that they can go to multiple food pantries if they're not getting enough food. So we make sure that we provide them with printed materials so that they can be educated, especially people who are recently laid off. They really are still in panic mode, don't know what to do, what the next step is, and we're there to help them find their bearings and give them hope for future. And that is really a big relief to know that they can come, no questions asked, pick up the food they need, and share it with their neighbors and family. It's so rewarding for us. We never have a problem finding volunteers to do this type of work, compared to running events for our church. Finding volunteers for, say, a health fair, it took me months to find enough volunteers. When we have a food distribution event, we've never not had enough volunteers show up, because it's so joyful to be able to serve people this way. And I don't know what it is about food, but there's a lot of joy around it. And it's not just in your own home and in your own kitchen. It really is in the food pantry too.
It's universal. Food's universal.
It is.
So if anyone is interested in seeing how this all works, volunteering, doing something hands-on, send me an email. I'll put you in touch with Jane. I do know we're closing up in our hour, so I will quickly go through a little bit of these slides and I'll let Dana take over. A lot of the contributing issues with food waste also deals with labeling. So for those of you who are or are not aware, there are big differences between best by, sell by, use by, and expiration. So sometimes when they label best, sell, or use by, it's best by, sell by, it's regarding the peak flavor, peak freshness of a product. Sell by still means it's edible, but a store might not want to charge you money for that product when they know that it's not the best they're offering. Use by is a little more is a little more black and white. You see this with milk or eggs or like quickly perishable foods often. And then our state of Illinois is really strict on eggs. I think that's one of the main things that you don't want to gamble with. This morning I took some pictures. On the next slide, I took some pictures of just my stuff in the fridge. You see that milk has a use by. That's sort of like, okay, after this point you're proceeding your own caution. The buttermilk, it's more acidic. It's harder for pathogens to start forming. There's a sell by in there. This one is a sweet condensed milk. Best by, right? There's no expiration. It's in a can. It's okay. So a lot of these things I learned about too. I used to be somebody that just chucks it after I read the date, but not always, that doesn't always mean your food is spoiled. And often the stuff we rescue are near at their best by sell by dates. So even if that's non-sellable, it can still have a second life. Speaking of a second life for food, I'm gonna turn it over to Dana Rainey, who is the donation coordinator at Imperfect Foods. If you're not familiar with Imperfect Foods, is a to your door grocery delivery company, and they do something unique by educating as well as providing nutritious food.
Thanks, Jane. Hi, everyone. We're just super grateful as Imperfect to be able to partner with people like Jane and Jing, who are really doing that impact on the community. Food Rescue US and the work that Jane does is instrumental for our communities, and to really move that needle forward towards making change, not only for the planet and people. We need people like Jing and Jane that are doing that work. So I'm grateful to be here today and get to hear this awesome story about Food Rescue US and Jane and her food pantry. And really, Imperfect's just here to make sure if we have surplus, y'all have that at your disposal for your community. So we really believe that the only way to build a better food system and a less wasteful food system is to ensure we are doing that mindfully, right? So making sure our community has support. So not only donating our surplus, but really listening and understanding what our communities need. We also believe that food equity and access plays a super important role in empowering our piece of the food chain, right? So cultivating these solid partnerships like the ones we have with both of you women, allows us to implement strategies on allocating that surplus food and back into our communities with integrity. So again, we're just super grateful y'all can utilize the food and help us build that better food system we're all on a mission to create. So we can only hope that Imperfect's model can spread to other food industry companies that feel inspired to also make sure they're taking their surplus food and donating it. So thank you all for having us, but we're just super grateful for both of you. So here for support and always here for you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Dana.
you. Yeah, likewise. I think for a lot of companies were as responsible and engaging as Imperfect Foods. I think that would be a wonderful thing to have in our food ecosystem. Just, not judging something by its looks, getting to know that, okay, not every piece of fruit or vegetable looks picture perfect, and that there is variety in nature. Nature does funny things, but that doesn't mean we need to be throwing that away. We can still utilize all those parts. All right, so I know there's still 9 of you hanging on for the Q&A. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending. I mean, we are all part of the community. I'm not an expert, and I will say that over and over. I'm just an individual who really cares about food, who really loves sharing food, loves eating food, loves, cooking food for people. I think everybody should have access to that. I think that these are issues that are very solvable. These are issues that we can tackle from a ground up level, not from a corporate top down kind of structure. We can tackle this by volunteering together. If you want to sign up, you want to meet me, email me, call me, I'll show you how. If you want to share this information, educate, I had plans to take this into gleaning in the springtime. It'd be amazing to go see the farms. What are the farmers dealing with? What is the volume like? Is there a need for volunteers to glean? A lady I know who does this in St. Louis, people come out to the farms, they glean, they help out, and they take a bit of it home as well as a thank you. I had home ec classes in middle school that taught us about food, nutrition, where food comes from, how to prepare it, how to respect your food. And the biggest difference I notice when I am abroad versus in the US, we are in the land of plenty, but food is not a renewable resource. It's not an endless resource. So we should respect the food and what we have rather than, you know, I have enough, goodbye, and not think about what else can I do with it, right? What can I do with my carrot peels and kale stems? I also can't do it alone. I am one person and I do need the help of the community to go out in your town, your stores, ask them the questions I asked in the beginning. Do you have a plan for your surplus food? Is there currently a food rescue model that you utilize when you have too much, or when you have things you can't sell, or you have things that maybe the food banks won't pick up? Advocate, talk about it, ask the questions. The worst you get is just a no, thank you, right? Or just a no, but that's fine. All that we've done so far, honestly, is a lot, but it's still scratching the surface on this national and statewide food waste and food insecurity problem. So I need your help as a community to engage, and I'll be happy to talk more about that in person. Cindy also has some flyers I made for you guys. Some of these are pictured here. It talks about how to become an agency. Food donors don't even have to go through me. They can also just sign up on our site, and we can go from there and start a conversation. And I hope in the future that more people in my state will be motivated to start their own site. You know, Willowbrook is here, but it's not there. If you're over there, you can do it, right? I'm not from a political science, business, food background, but we will give you the support and show you how. So, well, that's our presentation. Thank you for listening. I want to hear what people in our community are wondering and what kind of questions you guys have for us, or just feedback. So feel free to write it or turn your buttons off mute, raise the hand. We can take some questions if you like.
In some cases, I can actually allow people to talk if you would prefer to do that.
Yeah.
Or
A little raise hand button if you want to.
Yeah.
I see Greg. Okay, Greg. Yeah. Greg wrote, in a suburban, primarily single family home context, backyard, for example, on site, composting would seem a suitable disposal option for food waste, particularly non-consumable byproduct. Do your nonprofits help enable that way to handle food waste? Actually, yes. Sometimes there is food waste, and was it you, Jane, or was it Leiden? They work with the gardening community as well, and they pass it to them.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it's us. We have a community garden, and we started composting for our pantry, and invited Westchester and Elmhurst Food Pantry to also compost their waste after we found out that they were throwing away their rotten produce and their bread. And so I applied for a grant that is going to build some extra large composters, and we're going to hold a class on how to properly compost the food and bread, remove the packaging materials, any food stickers or labels that their volunteers just have not been doing. They've been dropping off their compost to us in its rotten state, but with labels and packaging and all. It's quite time consuming for us to unwrap everything and separate it. But with the proper grant, we can pay volunteers to do that and build a nice large compost where the community can share in the composting and help the environment a little bit.
It also comes full circle because some of the gardening communities plan an extra row for food to donate. So some of
Right.
our other sites have seen that happen where, you know, hobby gardeners, or if you have a community garden, they might have an allotted section for food to donate to a local pantry.
We
So
have 20 beds, and we, rather than charging a fee to rent a bed to grow your own food, we gave 10 of those beds to the community for anyone to grow their own food. And the other 10 beds, rather than charging a fee, we're planting them ourselves and using the food in our own pantry and then sharing it.
yeah, so in terms of growth, like there is no manual for a site director. They never told me you need to do these steps, you need to hit these numbers, never. Each site grows organically based on the community's needs. So Greg, if you want to help spearhead this gardening, composting, we will help you out. We can talk. All right, we got a question from Kendra. Although I don't have time currently to start my own local Food Rescue US chapter, I would love to help Food Rescue US Willowbrook. Thank you as a food rescuer. Yes, it is possible. We always need volunteers. We always need rescuers because, again, hyper local. If you are living in Downers Grove, I'm not going to ask you to rescue like in Lakeview. So also depending on the needs of certain cities or counties, you might see, you know, more activity happening in like, say, Westchester than Hinsdale or something like that. So sign up. You'll get a little ping every time there's a new rescue in your area. You can claim it, or I also need help from volunteers to approach stores, approach donors, approach agencies, because I can't be everywhere at once. Yes, thank you for the link. So if you go to foodrescue.us, be the rescue, sign up to volunteer. It's just a quick fill out registration, download the app. And again, I'll come to the library and I'll help you out with that too in person. Thank you, Kendra. Anyone else? Other questions, queries? All right, so Cindy did mention this is recorded. This will be up for future generations to enjoy. I'll leave the PowerPoint presentation up so you get to know some of the slides. Unfortunately, Victoria had to go. She was already multitasking, picking up kids. So, you know, she chose kids. That's the right answer. And yeah, I'll leave all this information up. Email me at jing@foodrescue.us if you want more in-depth resources and articles and papers on all the topics we talked about. The only thing I didn't hit was the Bill Emerson Donation Act, which just means you can donate in good faith and you're not going to be liable. There are multiple checkpoints to make sure food is safe before distribution. So yeah, donate, guys, donate and help out. That's going to be so helpful to the future of the site and continuing it. All right, is that a wrap?
Thank you. Yeah, so
Great job, Jane.
Uh,
Jane.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jing, Dana, and Jane for being with us here today. Thank you for everybody who attended and stayed with us as we went over. I don't know for sure what days, but in-person programming returns to the library starting actually this coming Sunday with Blues 101. So Jing is going to find some days to come to the library and be sitting at their table. So stop on in, say hi, and get some more information. So thanks again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. You'll probably hear from me soon, but thank you, neighbors, for attending.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Bye, guys.